Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you real quick today about our property because it's actually the 1 year anniversary of the first time that we actually stepped foot on this property. Now we haven't lived on this property for 1 year, but we have known of, I guess, this property for a year because basically the day we stepped foot on it, we put an offer on it. But I wanted to talk to you about this because a lot of times people, I guess, they don't know how much can go into this kind of process. And in the sense of like, we're moving across country to a place we've never been to before. And now I know a lot of people have done that kind of stuff for work, but we didn't have jobs coming here. So it's not like a work related thing. It's a God calling thing. And it's one of those things too with, it's just beautiful in the sense of how he worked. So I wanted to share this with you because it's one of those things that, um, if you're feeling that call, and I know I've done several videos on this now, if you're feeling that call and you're wondering how is this going to happen or whatever, I want to share this with you because this is a pretty good indicator of how this stuff's going to happen. So sorry if it's a little bouncy. I'm kind of using a tree branch right now to hold up my phone. So my husband, a little over a year ago, actually kept feeling this pull to look at this property that is in our county that had been for sale for over a year. And it was about 800 an acre. Now granted, it was like, I think like 140 some odd acres or something like that, but or 173, I want to say. It was this beautiful piece of property that literally could have been a state park, and it had like a 50-foot waterfall on it and everything else. Absolutely gorgeous. Well, my husband, even though we'd just been to Oklahoma in January of last year, he in February kept feeling the pull to go back to Oklahoma to look at that piece of property. And basically, I kind of told my husband, like, you're nuts. We just went to Oklahoma. We're going to Oklahoma again in April. Like, this is a lot of traveling back and forth. We don't necessarily have, like, the means to do this. Or we did because we just sold our house. It was one of those things, like, I didn't want to keep spending money on it. So basically, my husband and I kind of had some lengthy conversations on it. And I realized that it was definitely something that we needed to do. And so we ended up going. We left our kiddos with our parents because we're going to just make a very quick trip to Oklahoma. It's literally going to be like a day of driving, a full like 24 hours of driving, stay for like a day and a half, and then drive back. Like, we were only going to be gone 4 days. So on the way to Oklahoma, my husband and I, we're kind of praying about this property and everything else, and we had brought money to do a down payment and everything else. And we drove his 89 F-250. It's a 4-wheel drive truck, and it did the trip just fine. Everything else, he had it checked out by a mechanic before we even left to make sure we weren't going to break down in the middle of nowhere. And we go look at the property. We contacted a realtor. We go look at property. There were several other properties we wanted to look at too, several of which we could have bought cash outright. But literally all those properties went under contract before we could even look at them. So we go and look at this one piece of property that was 173, I want to say, acres. Absolutely gorgeous, breathtakingly beautiful at a base of a mountain kind of deal. So gorgeous. But you basically needed a helicopter to get there. Four-wheel drive was not good enough. Like, it was crazy. Like, it was a miracle we even got to the property, let alone got back off the property, because it was down like some logging trail and, all this crazy stuff. We were not prepared for how crazy it was going to be. Well, basically what happened is, on the way back from that property, the brakes on my husband's truck went out. And we get back to the realtor's office. And he basically tells her about our brakes and that's definitely not the right property. And so she tells us about the property we have now. It had literally, as we were coming back from the other property, they had just signed the contract to sell the piece of land. No one had looked at it yet. No one had taken pictures of it yet, like no realtor, no nothing. They had literally just signed the contract with the seller to sell the property. So she tells us about it, and we said, yeah, we'll go take a look at it. We had to drop off my husband's truck actually at the mechanic shop that our realtor actually suggested to us. And so we dropped off the truck at the realtor's. Ended up, I think it was like the next morning we dropped it off, and our realtor took us to our property. And like I said, no one had even been on this property yet. We come on this property, and immediately I know it's absolutely beautiful. It's everything, like literally we could have ever wanted, dreamed for, the whole 9 yards. It literally had every single check box that we could possibly want. And so we basically had the process, and we were like, we absolutely want it, and we can put down a pretty good down payment on it and everything else, to where like the monthly payments wouldn't be that big of a deal at all. And so we were able to get, that day we came on the property, my husband and I also went to a local bank, got a loan, went back to the realtor's office, filled out the paperwork, and found out as we were submitting our offer that somebody else had also submitted an offer. That somebody else was another realtor from that same realty group, who had never seen the property, but had called a client that was also an out-of-stater and said, hey, I have this property that we just signed this contract with this property. Do you want it? So this other person who had never seen the property before, didn't even know what it was like, put an offer in for full asking price, just like we were, on the property. And my husband and I are like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is craziness. Like, we know the market out here is crazy anyways, in the sense of everybody trying to buy property out here. But like, this is ridiculous. Like, our realtor took the pictures of the property. So, and she wasn't going to share them with anybody until we decided whether we wanted the property or not. So literally, no, there were no pictures, nothing. And so this person was going in and buying this property, was trying to buy this property sight unseen. So we still put in our offer. We're like, you know what? Oh, well. So the seller had the option to look at identical contracts. We were both offering full asking price. We both had the same closing. We were both doing financing and everything else. And basically my husband and I, we got our truck back. Now the thing is we were supposed to leave that morning. The morning we came to look at this property is actually the morning we were supposed to leave, because that was kind of like our planned leaving day. But because the brakes on my husband's truck went out, we weren't able to leave. And so now, granted, we honestly wouldn't have left knowing that this property had just become available. It just kind of made sure we didn't leave. So we basically got his truck after the meeting with the realtor, and we're like, okay, now we have to drive back to Florida. And because my husband's like super awesome overnight driver. And we actually had decided at one point that we were going to want to stay in a hotel, but the one hotel here was already booked. And there's more hotels, but the one really clean one was already completely booked that night. So we couldn't even stay in it, even though we just stayed in it. Like, we couldn't even go back into our room because it was already booked solid. And so we're like, okay, I guess we're going to drive overnight kind of deal. We'll stop probably around midnight or so and, sleep at a rest stop like we normally do. And then we'll drive back the rest of the way to Florida. So at about midnight, when we were getting ready to stop, we were at near a gas station that we stopped at frequently on the trip in Mississippi. And I think one of the radiator hoses or something like that blew in my husband's truck. Now, in a sense, this is crazy, because if we had stayed overnight and left in the morning like we planned on, it would have been like the middle of the day, and we would have been probably on a much busier part of the interstate. There would have at least been more vehicles on the interstate anyways. But instead, we were already literally getting ready to pull off the interstate at this moment. There were barely any cars anywhere, and the gas station we were planning on staying at anyways, like we were very familiar with, because it had been like the 7th time we'd stopped at this gas station anyways. And so it worked out. We fixed it. Literally, like a clamp on a hose came undone, so he literally just clamped it back on, filled the fluid back up, and we were fine. And we left the next morning and drove the rest of the way back to Florida. And the entire time, we don't know if we're going to get the property or not. There's literally a 50-50 shot. So the next morning, we put in a contract, left Oklahoma. We're driving back to Florida. We're now back in Florida. So this is literally probably like 3 o'clock-ish or so in the afternoon the following day. So almost 24 hours after we put in our contract. We get a call from the realtor, and the realtor tells me that the seller has chosen who gets the property, and the seller chose our contract. And I screamed, started crying, started praising God, the whole 9 yards. Like it was a very happy moment in the truck. And she asked me, she's like, "Do you want to know why the seller chose you?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "The seller chose you because you actually walked the property." Did you hear that, guys? My husband, who had a feeling about another piece of property that we really, really, really needed to go look at it, and my husband's not the one to necessarily get feelings all the time. My husband, who pushed for this, we decided to, okay, let's go ahead and do this. We randomly went on a random week. Yeah. So we got the property because we had actually walked it and seen it, and she felt more comfortable, the seller, to sell it to somebody who had seen the property. So, I don't know about y'all, but between brakes busting, or actually getting a feeling that we need to go somewhere, brakes busting, so we stay here longer, and then we ended up having to leave sooner than expected, so we're in a safe place when a hose goes off, to being the ones walking on the property and everything else. I don't know about y'all, but there's a whole lot of God in that. We basically came home and we were able to tell our family that we signed the contract, because I signed the contract on my phone basically. And we started the process of getting our property. So it's one of those things, guys, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And it's not going to be meant to be by any form of you pushing or prying or trying so hard. That can happen, but it's going to be easier when you're doing it God's way. We could have picked another weekend. We could have picked another time. We could have done a whole bunch of different things differently and not had this property. Yes, we would have gotten a different property, but it wouldn't have been this one. And it's definitely this one that I believe is what we're supposed to have. So, I just wanted to share that all with you guys. I'm pretty excited that it's basically been 1 year since we stepped foot on this property, and I'm very thankful to God for what He's done for us and how He has basically blessed us with this property. Hope you all have a great day.